meeting will be recorded. I will call the meeting to order, and I have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, the next item is guests. So what we're gonna do is speed this up and get to the topics that I believe you as our guests are most interested in, rather than hurrying it in later on in the agenda. So what I'll start is we'll introduce the board members and staff. My name is John Prather. As I said, I was the board chair. Jerry, do you want to?
Jerry Key.
Elizabeth Whipperman.
Jim Carlson. Brian Long, lead operator.
Dan Mello, District Superintendent.
And Mello, Assistant Office Manager.
Sean Plumber, operator.
Jason Pyatt, Office Specialist.
Nick Brunel, operator training.
Lincoln Loving, operator training.
And if you would, if you could, I know you've signed in, but perhaps you could repeat your name and also tell us any organizational affiliation that you may have. Do we have anybody online that needs to introduce themselves?
We have two people that have joined.
Okay, well, let's start with the people in the meeting here. So if you could start just
Tamara.
with your name and.
Tamara Perman, Jandy Oyster Company.
Todd Furman, Jandy Oyster Company.
Travis Loya, Never Shoppers Farm.
Brian Smith, Cape Lookout Oyster.
Tracy Smith, Cape Lookout Oyster.
Mike Lucas, Outlaw Oyster.
Okay, and do we have somebody online?
Two people.
If you could introduce yourself.
Mark White, Whiskey Creek. Barry Boring, Schooner Restaurant.
Okay, so. If you could mute yourself till you're ready to speak, and then raise your hand at that point and unmute yourself, and then you'll be welcome to talk to the group, if that's all right, just for to kill any background noise in the interim. So what we're thinking of doing here, what the plan is we're going to start. Dan Mello will talk about the spill and give you information on that. After that, we'll open it up to public discussion and comments. If you want to make a statement, take about 3 minutes. If you want to make a statement and have some questions, I'm thinking 5 to 6 minutes, depending upon what the answer takes. But with that, I figure up front, to lay the groundwork here, Dan will talk about the spill that occurred on August 5th.
Does anybody have any questions? I mean, have you read everything that's been put out, or what's the question?
We have a lot of questions.
We
Okay,
would love to hear your explanation of what happened and facts.
Okay.
Like we're hearing speculatory information. We don't have any facts.
Right, and I can't answer for the agencies why their lack of response on this incident. It's never been like this in the past. So,
Dan, I'm sorry. Mark, could you please mute your microphone for us? We're just getting some feedback.
You getting that from me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you eating dinner?
Let me just.
No. In here. Ouch.
are we ready? Okay, at approximately midnight, August 5th, so 12 a.m., it just turned Friday, we were notified through our telemetry system that we had a problem, pump failure at the Netarts pump station. The guys were dispatched out. When they received the notification, the fault wouldn't clear, so they knew there was something they had to respond to. Upon arriving, they found water running across the parking lot. We've done this before. We've gone through it. We knew what it was. They shut the pump station down completely, so it would no longer pump. They shut off the valve out in the grassy area where you pull out, you know, after you launch your boats. Well, you'll see where the spot is. And what they did was they shut those valves so no more water would drain out of the force main. Our force main is approximately 9,000 feet long. So it pumps up to the top, close to the entrance of the capes, and then it goes to gravity to the main pump station, and then it's conveyed up the hill to us. So upon there, everything was shut down. We had to calculate through our SCADA system. We could see when the pumps had the problem, and we could see how much they pumped. So we know what the volume is by each pump cycle. So that was our estimate of what was pumped out. And then by the pressure in the line, we could estimate how much was lost out of the line. Usually when we have a rupture in a force main that pumps 150 PSI, it blows a hole in the ground. I mean, there's no doubt where the failure's at. This was the first time we'd ever seen something that the water basically seeped up out of the ground. So we shut off everything, we blocked off the boat basin, we lined everything, and that was completed before 2 a.m. At 1:54 a.m., I was up here at the office. I had 1 hour to call Oregon Emergency Response and report any spillage, which we did that. And so we reported all the gallons. We estimated we lost about 1,500, maybe about out of the force main that contributed to what pumped out of the wet well. So we don't have flow meters to give you an exact gallonage of what soaked into the ground, what went across the parking lot and dried, and what actually touched the bay water. We can only give a total amount estimate of what we lost. Okay, so, because I have received questions on that. There's no way for us to determine how much actually entered the bay down through the boat ramp. So we lined it off, we blocked off the boat ramps, and I think some of you came down there and saw that we had the boat ramp blocked where you couldn't access through there, you couldn't launch your boats. At 7 a.m., I received a call from Oregon Department of Agriculture. They told me to move the blockades back. They were not closing the bay. That's all we were informed. At that point, we moved the blockades back, allowed boats to launch, but we only gave enough room so you could launch and retrieve. But we had to close off the area because we didn't know how much we had to dig up. No, until we got contractors in to find out what had happened. So by 11 a.m., we started hauling that night around 3:30. You probably saw the big green Zawald tanker trucks. They started transferring the raw influent from the wet wells up here to our lagoons. And that continued until we got the contractor there. They excavated, first they hydro, and then they excavated with an excavator. When we opened it up, we didn't find anything wrong. There wasn't even any leaking anywhere. So we're expecting to see a cracked or ruptured pipe. We didn't find anything. We had to literally bump the pumps to find where the water came out. That's when we found a failed gasket that was connected to a valve. So in 25 years, I've never seen one of those gaskets ever fail, but it literally pushed out under the pump pressure. So the spill was minimal because of it wasn't a rupture in the pipe where we could have lost 20, 30,000 gallons. So everything was shut off. We at that point, we took, and this valve, there was a piece of pipe, there was a valve that was connected to the old force main. When we built the new pump station, I don't know if some of you remember back in 2005, we also put in a new force main. Well, we had to keep the old force main running on the pump station until the new one was in and hooked up. Then we closed the valve, opened the new one, and we started using the old force main, the brand new one.
Dan, you guys know what a force main is? Okay.
Well, they're probably familiar with it now, yeah. So anyway, that was 17 years ago, okay? So what we did to make sure that this incident would not happen again, we completely severed that pipe, and we pulled that chunk of pipe out. We put a blind flange on the new T for the new force main. When I say new, it was new in 05 when we put it in. And so that failure can't happen again. Okay, I'm not saying any new failures can't. There's a reason that the district has to come up with an emergency response plan. And this covers any type of spills. You know, we could get spills out over from a plugged up sewer line can overflow. As you've all witnessed, culverts fail. And sometimes when culverts fail, they take out our sewer lines as well. We had that happen just a couple, 2-3 years ago, right there at Silver Sands. That took out over 100 feet of our sewer line. It just took it away when the side of the highway gave way. We did the same thing, OER response, but for some reason at that point, they didn't choose to I don't know, close anything down. We have no authority over the bay, just so you know, or the shell fisheries, or you know, human contact in there. So we were out of that except for the repairs at 7 o'clock on the 5th that morning when Oregon Department of Agriculture said they were not closing the bay. They did tell us they were doing a 21-day mandatory shutdown of the oyster farmers. I don't know why. I know there's an Oregon statute that came in effect, it looks in 2019, that addresses that. Reported DEQ, we spoke to them. 5,000 gallons in a 7 billion gallon bay is, the dilution is probably untraceable. And that's where the district stands on that. We've never been asked to test. We don't test because we don't know what the bacteria levels are allowed by the Oregon Health Authority. So Oregon Health Authority is usually the one that does the testing. So in 2016, one of those, they came out the next day and they were testing the bay for fecal matter and stuff like that, for fecal results.
Do you not have any routine discharge testing, which is a separate area, but you don't have any testing that you
So
do?
discharge testing, we test here, and then before it leaves, and then it travels down and goes out towards the Three Arch Capes. It goes out of almost a mile out to sea. That's our discharge point. So we test it here before it's pumped into the pipe and heads out to the ocean.
Might want to mention the treatment system that we have put in place.
This
But
was on.
even backing up, ours is water that is non-salt water is what we test before it goes out into the ocean. Saltwater testing, I think you had said to me, is something that we have never done. Is that
Well,
correct? Or?
Right, so we don't have the ability to test bacteria levels in salt water. The microorganisms that we deal with and stuff is in fresh water. All the organisms, as soon as they hit salt water, die. Fecal and enterococci is another type of fecal bacteria that can live longer in salt water. Enterococci lives the longest. But I do not know what the Oregon Health Authority tests for the bacteria levels or what bacterias for safe consumption of shellfish. I just don't know. It's not anything that we do. So that was the details on what broke and how we fixed it, and it is fixed and it's back up and operational. So,
What caused the gasket to fail? Was it a new install? Like, it
no,
looks
that
like
was
years
installed,
later.
no, that bypass system was installed 17 years ago. And we have those gaskets, just so you know, in multiple spots throughout these force mains, and we have 9 force mains. Every pump station has an associated force main with it. Netarts force main, Netarts pump station down by the bay, it pumps all the way to Oceanside, and then the other one pumps from the main pump station, which is another large one, and it pumps up the hill to the treatment plant, which I can show you on the map behind me if you want to see it.
So 2 weeks prior to the valve, the gasket blowing, you guys were doing some work with the heavy equipment out there, replacing a pump or something in that pumping station? Is that correct? Is there,
June 10th.
Last year,
no, it was this year. It was in the in the last month or so?
We changed out the air compressor for our surge arrestor. Our surge arresters, think of it as a giant air shock absorber for the force main, so water hammer can't damage it. But we had an air compressor failure, we had the equipment in there, we had to swap out and rewire up a new air compressor.
Nothing to do with the force main?
Nothing to do with the force main. It's a component of, to monitor the force main, but it's not anything to do with whether the force main fails. I mean, the whole surge arrestor system can shut down, but it won't cause a leak.
Won't cause a gasket to blow?
No.
Well, you said the gasket was 17 years old. Do you have like a preventative maintenance where you replace those gaskets?
There is no preventative maintenance plan for a force main. They're usually directional drilled in deep. They're underground. You can't run, we have CCTV cameras that we run through gravity lines, but there is nothing that we can do to go look inside the pipe to see if it's failing or if something's coming loose or anything like that. Excuse me, I gotta admit somebody else. So there is no maintenance plan for a force main like that that's buried in the ground. So, if you follow the force main, you'll see where it comes, well, I'll just get it and show you. So, here's the Netarts pump station. This is your boat launch. The force main runs up through the parking lot, you know where the grassy area is. It runs up through the parking lot, it turns, and it heads up Old Netarts Road here. It comes up what is this park, Vista Drive, goes back out onto the highway, just right there by Holly Heights, okay? Comes there, then it comes back down through Fifth Street Loop, then it turns and comes up and goes to Second Street, right here, drops back down onto the highway, right there at the entrance of Happy Camp Road. It goes down Happy Camp Road, all the way past the pump station that's there. Then it turns and it's directional drilled under Happy Camp Hideaway. That's this portion right here. Comes under the highway, surfaces up, you know that old turnout up there just above Happy Camp, above the Happy Camp resort area, and they've got big rocks in it now blocking it. It comes out there, it surfaces. Emery and Sons did a connection there, and then it comes up, and it comes up to right here where Breezy Way is. It goes there, you'll see a manhole, if you drive by there, you'll see a manhole. That's got a clean out in it, then it goes to Gravity right here. And then it flows by Gravity around Terracea and stuff, and it goes to our main pump station. The force main stops back up here though. So there's a lot of head pressure back this direction. Now, Happy Camp pumps to the Netarts pump station. Ocean Highlands pumps to the Netarts pump station. So everything from this end and the beginning of Netarts all goes to this pump station. It is a critical pump station. And so everything is collected here, then it's conveyed to our main pump station, which then conveys it up the road, what you just drove up here to the headworks at this pump station, to this treatment plant. So this was realigned and rebuilt in '05 because all the failures that we had in it when it used to come up behind the capes and went along the beach. We've had blowouts on the beach before. When I first started here back in the late '90s.
That stuff that went down Fall Creek there.
Fall Creek, yep, exactly. That one completely failed at one time and slid out of there, and they put a bypass in. So we eliminated all of the potential ground movement. Usually it's ground movement that caused this stuff. But after years, this was constructed of ductile iron, and it was all rusted and rotted out at the bottom. So there's a lot of vibration in force mains, and so it works in the sand and the gravel, the rock in there, and basically it divoted the whole pipe. So we were getting blowouts that were probably the size of a 50-cent piece to a $1 piece. And it wasn't a rupture because it was ductile iron, but it was beyond its useful life. It was put in '78. This is all HDPE. pipe, so it's a really thick plastic. Even if a backhoe was to accidentally hit it, say they were doing some work, they could scar it, but it's highly unlikely they would break it. I can't guarantee there's never gonna be an overflow or a failure again, but all this material has a 50-year life, and none of this HDP has failed on us. We had some issues, as you all know. I think some of you looked up some stuff from quite a few years back. Some of it was kind of old, back in '04, but in 2006, the district was entered into a mutual agreement and order with DEQ, and that's when we started all the upgrades and replacement of, well, just about everything.
One
There's
thing
nothing-
that's not clear with the history, and like when you talk about other flows, and you talked about it happening before, our mind goes to to the boat launch. Like, is that where they each happened, or were they somewhere else? along the way?
No, the other failures happened on here along Happy Camp Road and out toward, you know where that parking lot is out there, out towards the mouth of the bay? That's where we've had 3 or 4 failures were there.
So that's why they wouldn't close the bay down, because they were away from the bay.
They were away from the bay, and 3 of those never even reached the water. And we have pictures that shows where we roped it off, where it didn't even get into the water. So nobody closed it.
How did you know about this one starting?
This one
Yeah.
that just happened,
Yeah.
Sean received a call out from our SCADA telemetry system that monitors it. So he calls it out, he can bring it up on his iPhone, he had a look, he saw there was something wrong, there were faults at the pump station. Grabbed Lincoln, they responded, and that's when they found the leak.
So it's essentially an alarm, right?
It's an alarm,
within
yeah,
30
it's an
minutes.
alarm,
Yeah.
but the alarms are set. You have to lose so much pressure in your force main before it triggers an alarm. So if it doesn't drop low enough, you could still have a hole like a gasket leaking, and we won't know about it. But we have backup alarms. So this backup alarm, what it did was, it faulted out the pumps, because when there's no pressure, when the pumps fired up, it pushed the gasket out, so no water was really going up through the force main to build enough pressure. The check valve couldn't open far enough, trip the limit switch, so the pump thinks there's no flow, and it shuts down and locks out. The only way to get it going again is the guys have to respond, and they have to reset it manually. That's when it was discovered what it was. If it was a rupture in the pipe, we would have had all kinds of alarms going off telling us immediately, and we would have known before we got out there what the problem was. But this one was odd, because it was a small gasket that let loose, and the only time it lost sewer water is when you turn the pump on. You could see the gasket move, and then it would release that's why there was no big hole down there. On Happy Camp Road, there was no, I mean, you knew when you got there, there was a, 8-foot wide, 6-foot deep hole in the ground, because it's like a hydraulic mine. It blows it up, just like a ball.
Is there an open investigation with DEQ on this one? Is there still an open?
I haven't received a response from DEQ, so I'm gonna answer yes, I believe there probably is. So I sent him in the letter of what we found, what had happened, with the engineer. We always bring our engineer out, so that the engineer can write what failure it was, how it happened, what they believe it was. And so we already turned all that into DEQ. I don't know how long it'll take to get a response, but usually they will write something within a couple of weeks, and then if there's any recommendations they believe that we should do to increase the chance that there won't be a failure, then they'll put that in a written letter to us.
That's the biggest concern, is how do we know that this won't happen again? And it doesn't feel good, because it's so much that depends on that area, and there's no mitigation, no sump, no anything. It's just us guessing how much went into the bay.
Can something be designed and installed out there near the boat ramp it sounds like preventing a failure from ever happening isn't realistic, but it can be some safety measure, something to keep it out of the water. My understanding is it doesn't matter the amount that ends up in the bay. A teaspoon ends up in the bay, and this triggers this again. Is there a way to just contain a parking lot or something and keep us open?
the ugly answer is no, because you never know how much you're gonna lose. So if you could put in, let's say, a catch basin well, or even that it could feed back into our current well, okay? If that force main ruptures and you get an instant release of pressure and you get 30,000 gallons back, there isn't enough containment to grab it all. Now, the likelihood of that happening, just like this time, if we'd cut that off 17 years ago, none of you folks would be sitting here and we wouldn't be having this conversation. But it didn't, but it's been removed now. I can assure you that those valves are no longer connected to the upgraded force main. So I can never tell you 100% that we're not gonna have a spill. There could be a plugged up sewer line coming from the RV park, and there's manholes along the Bay Road there. They could overflow as well. We have no way of guaranteeing you never a spill again. But we do everything we can to assure that. We have, the board has invested in $250,000 of inspection camera equipment. And we go through those lines and we look for cracks and breaks and root intrusion and holes and stuff like that in the gravity lines. Just so that we don't have to face an overflow. But other than that, there's no guarantee that all of this infrastructure won't have a failure at some point. DEQ recognizes that. That's why they make us come up with an emergency response plan. So the guys have a short sheet that's at the pump stations and the pickups, and they follow these, and this one's specifically written for Netarts force main. We've never had a failure like this ever. And we're never gonna have one like this again because there's no more valves. The valves have been taken out of it.
When did you take the valve out?
Well, we severed it. We without having to destroy the parking lot, we just cut it off the section. And I have pictures that we took, and we took out the reducer. So there is no physical connection between the old force main where it broke and the new force main.
So where's the valves on the new?
There is a valve, there's a shut-off valve, and this is to help contain how much gets out and can potentially go into the bay. There is a shut-off for that 10-inch force main in that grassy area. So we can shut that valve off and stop any more water from flowing back. So that was never in the old force main design. It just emptied until it got to, whatever level it was at, and that's how long it would flow. The guys can now respond within 15, 20 minutes, and they can shut that valve off. Now, if most of our failures that we dealt with in the last 10 years has been on the PVC pipe that was replaced in there in 2005 when it was done on Happy Camp. So there were 3 of those custom engineered elbows. All 3 of them burst. I mean, they looked like a barber chair when they came apart. All those have been replaced. Even the one that didn't break, with the engineer, we decided that we would just take it all out and not take another chance with it. So all that's been replaced.
So was it $250,000 that you spent on cameras?
Mhm.
Is that, so are those in place now, or is that?
Well, they're in a truck, so we'll pick sections of pipe. So like if you look right up behind your head, those are all inspected, repairs to leaky manholes so we don't get seepage out, all of our gravity lines. But there is no way that any equipment, unless you drain a force main and you shut it down, but there's no access points to it. I mean, there's another clean out 9,000 feet away, but cameras are good for up to 1,000 feet and that's it. But in this case, there was no way to even TV because of the way it's shaped. The gasket's on the outside of the pipe that's held in with pressure. It's called a mega lug. And so even if we ran a camera through it, we wouldn't have saw this gasket was spinning and the camera can't see it. It's on the outer side of the bell of the pipe. The pipe slides into that valve by about that far, So the camera could go through, if you could get it in there, the camera would go through, but they can't see backwards because it's a tight fit. Does that make, I know it doesn't make any better, but there's no, on a force main is special, there's nothing that we can do inside of a force main to go in and look at it. And because they're underground, we would have to do an open inspection. We would have to shut the highway down, cut open those sections, shut down Fifth Street Loop, Netarts Road, Vista Road. It's, everything is buried. Now, we do have what's called air vacuum release valves every so far apart on the force main, and that lets air in when the pump stops so that it doesn't suck the pipe flat. It also, when the pumps start, it pushes air out, and then the check ball comes up and it closes off and it continues to pump. That's the only place that we can actually physically look, and the guys go and look at these air valves to make sure that they are working, so that there's no overpressure in the line and causing stress somewhere down the line. All the manholes you pass driving up, those are all air vacuum release valves for the force main that comes from the main up to here. So as long as those are operating, you know that the force main is operating as it should. We get no high pressure readings on the gauge. We have an actual gauge that's hooked to the electric gauge, it's hooked to it. And we have what's called static head when it's not pumping. They look for that to be normal. So it's generally around 120 PSI. If they see it drops below that, like 110 or 100, then they know there's a problem somewhere up higher. And when it pumps, if it goes above 150 PSI, if it doesn't reach 150 PSI, we also have something we need to go check. So we follow the alignment of the force main to see if there's a leak or something like that.
Just to be clear, it sounds like you're saying there will be no measures taken, no changes made to prevent this from happening again in the future.
That's not what I said. What I said was, from this happening.
But you're not going to dig a ditch and catch basin. You're not going to make any changes down there at the boat ramp to prevent sewage running down the boat ramp again.
I don't even know if DEQ would allow something like that. We're not allowed just to go dig a hole and put in a catch basin if we want. Everything has to be engineered and
At
approved
this
through
point, you
DEQ.
have no plans to do it.
We have no plans of doing it. And we're not gonna have to wait to see what DEQ tells us if there's something they want us to
We
do.
share a very small community here. It feels negligent. It feels cruddy that you've left 30, 40 families without income for several weeks without even notifying them, without even touching base. How you guys doing?
We're only allowed to call Oregon Emergency Response. That's the only number. They do not want every agency out there putting out a different statement or putting out information.
I'm not talking about agencies, I'm talking about
Like our
Personal.
emails
families.
or
Like, hey, how you
trying
guys
to reach
doing?
out?
Here you're
You-
shut down in the busiest time of year.
At 7 a.m. in the morning, Oregon Department of Agriculture called us and said the bay was open.
It's been a week and a half.
Oregon Department
Hey,
of
excuse me,
Agriculture
but
called us.
I was down there Friday morning, and the
Yeah.
first thing the board chairman told me is, we're trying everything to keep you from getting shut down. Wrong answer. What did we do to get shut down?
I don't know what the board chair said to you, and I did see him talking to you, okay?
Yeah,
You showed me an email, and I don't know exactly, I don't remember who it was from. I scrolled it down, whether that was Ag,
Department of Ag.
yeah. As far as, very honestly, as far as I'm concerned, the sooner we get it shut down, the sooner there's no more sewage going into the system, out into the public and going down the boat ramp. But, I mean, we have no control over what these other departments in the state may decide to do or not do. I mean, I don't
So-
know.
You only have control over the sewage, keeping it out of the bay. Keep it out of the bay, and we have no problem.
We wouldn't have this problem if somebody hadn't put sewage in the bay.
Exactly.
We wouldn't be.
No, we understand that,
No,
but there,
but we're shut down for 21 days because of raw sewage in the bay.
We didn't notify anybody local. At 7 a.m., Alex from Oregon Department of Ag called me and said, move your barricades, that they were not closing the bay.
Well, your story says that it happened about midnight. The story we got was it was 1 o'clock in the morning. So.
When we were
don't-
first notified, we didn't know what it was at midnight. We just knew we had a
So
we had a
there
pump problem.
potentially could have been more than 5,000 gallons if it started leaking at midnight and it didn't get shut down till 1:30 in the morning.
No, our SCADA shows those pumps built pressure and pumped. We have the exact time that they faulted out.
So another question I have for you, I was told by another source that when they had the big sewage spill down here in Uquinna
Newport?
Yeah, Uquinna Bay.
Yeah.
The city of Newport went out and started testing right away, testing the waters in 5 different spots. One of the spots was up by the oyster ground. Why didn't you?
We don't test saltwater. That is.
Doesn't matter. You just told me ODA or Oregon Health Authority does testing.
Mhm.
Why didn't you tell them to test it?
We don't order Oregon Health Authority to do anything.
Did you request them to test it?
Did not, the bay wasn't closed.
You're correct. The bay was not closed. The oyster farmers were closed. Commercial oyster farming.
When did you realize that the farms were shut down?
When I heard about it, because this didn't go off like any other time. Usually my phone starts ringing an hour after I make the call. The first phone call I received was at 7 a.m. from Oregon Department of Ag saying that move your barricades, we're not closing the bay. Some hours later I heard that, because he said you gotta let the oyster farmers in, they have to go work their beds. That was the statement made to me at 7 a.m. Now, how am I to know that they restricted you from harvesting? It wasn't until I met with John up here and I called Alex back at Oregon Department of Ag to find out what was going on. About 3:45 that afternoon, he calls back. Okay? He calls back and he says, no, the oyster farmers cannot harvest for 21 days. It's mandatory OER. First time I've ever heard about it. I think the last time we had a spill, they shut the bay down for 7 days only because they had to do some testing, and each test takes 24 hours before you get the results. I've never even heard of this before.
I think
When
there
was
are
the
new
last time
federal
that was shut
regulations.
It was in the early 2000s, and I think it was only for less than 7 days.
I think there are federal regulations in place now, nationwide, that this is mandatory 21 days.
Yep.
That's why I'm concerned about what can we do to keep it out of there. The teaspoon hits the
It's
water.
what we do every day. We try to maintain this stuff every day. This took 17 years to fail. I'd have bet you it never would have happened. I've never seen this type of failure before. DEQ has never seen this type of failure before. But what we did to make sure this doesn't happen again there at that boat basin is we cut that chunk of pipe off. But what I will not tell you folks is that I can guarantee you that the sewer system will not fail at some point. I can't tell you if we'll ever have a washout of a road and take our sewer out and start dumping sewer again. I can't tell you that. All I can tell you is we put together a plan to try to mitigate this. Now, you brought up Newport. How much was their loss?
350,000
Yeah.
gallons.
How much was our loss?
We don't know.
5,000 gallons.
We have so many different reports, we don't know who's
Well,
telling.
I don't know, that's the only report that's
We
ever
had one
been.
person said that they were in the water swimming and the water smelled like poop.
Well,
So how, I mean, where do we go?
I have a lady that called me and said she feels funny ever since she read about this spill, and she was eating raw oysters with 20 other people. And I said, when was the harvest date? She had no idea. We have these people, they're now smelling sewer from the brown foam from the surf below the main pump station. Now they're all of a sudden, everybody's smelling sewer. Everybody. Now, I don't agree with what Oregon Department of Ag did in
Oregon
the
Department
rules.
of Ag didn't do it.
Huh?
Oregon Department of Ag is not the one that did it. FDA is who shut us down.
Well, then that's new information to me also.
It's a federal regulatory system.
According to, when the Tillamook County Pioneer sent all those questions in, did you guys see the chain of emails on that? And the responses from all the agencies? We made copies for you if you guys want to see them. And their responses, okay? The, right next to the green pen? Yeah.
You haven't seen it?
And it's pretty bad that that's where I have to get my information from, is the Tillamook County Pioneer, because I can't get any information out of the agencies. I share your frustration. I understand that it was our sewer that went out. But 5,000 gallons into a 7 billion gallon Netarts Bay that has the best hydraulics, I'm finding out, on the coast for, you know, emptying out, and exchanges new water every 24, up to 4 billion gallons every 24 hours. Okay?
Part of the beauty of the bank.
But that's what we understand.
Yeah.
But what we also understand is there's, us oyster farmers and the other guys that aren't here cannot harvest or sell any of our product in the busiest time of the year, and it hurts. It's hurting every one of us.
I fully understand.
I'm
And
not sure that you probably do. I don't know about anyone else, but I had sent an email just asking for just general information on the spill.
And I responded to it.
We never got a response.
Aaron sent it to me. I believe it came in, you did it to the website at like 7 a.m. in the morning.
I'm not sure what time it was.
I believe the,
Did anyone else send an email?
that's the only one I got through the website.
Yeah.
So if you didn't receive my response back through the website, we need to find out what's wrong with the website. But I did respond to your email. And you're the only one
Yeah,
that
I
I
never
received
received
one. Okay, well, I will check into that, but you should have got the response.
This question, how big is this pipe that you abandoned? You say you cut it off, capped the valve,
So the pipe that was abandoned was 8 inch.
8 inch? What's the length of that abandoned pipe?
Well, it's cut off in several areas, but it used to be close to 9,000 feet.
That would have been excellent containment if there was a spill.
The reason it was abandoned and it was because you can't use it for containment, it's got holes in it.
It's a great idea though, right?
We had to drain that pipe after we switched over to the new one. They made us drain that. That's why those valves are in there. We had to drain that pipe back. We weren't allowed to leave any water in it because they figured it was gonna seep out.
I don't know whether it'd be better to put it in the pipe, seep into the ground, or just let it flow down the ramp into the bay.
Well, we know let it
Both-
flow down the
both
ramp
bad.
into the bay is a bad idea.
Well, it is a bad idea.
There's no minimum spill for reportage. We have to report anything we lose. Anything we lose.
But you had people on the ground that were on the ground that saw the sewage go into the bay,
Yes,
and they're here right now?
yes.
How much went in the bay?
5,000 gallons.
We
That's
can
what the
only
whole spill
calculate,
was.
we can only, look, the
It all
5,000.
It all went in the bay.
Not all of it, no.
Okay, the 5,000 gallons is an estimate of what we believe we lost out of the force main, okay, by the pressure that was in it, and what a pump cycle is. It only pumped one cycle before it tripped out. So each pump cycle is around 3,000 gallons. It was there with the engineer, okay? And so we calculated out what we believe was lost. And we don't fudge those numbers. If we do anything, we might add a little bit to it, just for uncertainty. There is no way to measure what escapes that pipe. There are no flow gauges on there or anything. I can't tell you how much soaked into the ground. I can't tell you how much went across the bay, across the parking lot and stayed there.
When you get the alarm, do the pumps all automatically shut
They
off?
automatically shut off. Yeah. And that was the other thing, they got there, and they didn't see any pumping of sewer water out.
until you started pumps again and.
Well, we didn't start those until after the contractor was here and he dug it up and says there's nothing broken. And we said, well, we know there's something broken, you could smell it going across the parking lot.
So the whole 5,000 gallons could have been in the parking lot, not even went down the
No, it was evident it went down the ramp.
It could have been a slow leak over time that just never got to
No.
the point of setting the alarm off.
No.
It was
No.
a.
If you lose, these are high pressured pumps, high pressured. So it doesn't take much of a pinhole to lose 100 PSI all of a sudden. And I'm telling you, this was a small hole that was created when the gasket moved. Once the pump started and started to generate pressure, you could see the gasket move out. And it came out of there like a hydraulic mining. So we captured all of it right there. We shut the pumps back off. We pumped it with sump pumps, trash pumps over to the wet well, so we didn't lose anything onto the ground. But to answer your question, I can't give you an exact gallon, and I believe that was one of her questions in the email, how much actually went in the bay and how much went on the ground.
Why
We
don't,
can't determine that, and
It
it
don't
sounds
matter how
like it
much.
wouldn't have mattered.
it doesn't
From
matter.
what you're telling me, if
What-
there was a gallon in it, it wouldn't have
Yeah,
mattered.
can I ask you questions about that, if you don't mind? Because this is I'm reading, it's a federal law that does the closure, and Oregon implements that. They have to follow the federal statute with the Oregon administrative rules. And it's automatic 21-day closure if they're aware of any kind of contact with the sewer. There's no requirement to go out and test to say, oh, it's okay, we don't have to do the full 21 days. It's 21 days regardless. And that's what I'm hearing, the real crux of the
It didn't-
damage for you
It
guys
didn't
is
sound like
that-
there was even an
and no one's even
allowance to test
tested.
out.
And we don't test the bay, we don't test, that's not having any revenue.
You guys deal with poop.
We do, well.
But you don't have anybody in your
And other people
organization?
deal with healthy oysters and seawater and bays. We have a system that kept all but a tiny bit of poop out of the bay, and only once every 16 years. And we're sorry about that, we're really, that happened. It's extremely rare occurrence, but it happened. But what happened appears to be really nominal or minimal, and there was no way for the federal system to allow the impact on you to be less by testing that right away, as you apparently said the city did in Netarts. So what happened here is you got an automatic 21-day suspension for a minor spill that probably logically and mathematically couldn't have an impact on your oysters.
It's not
Did-
minor to any of our.
No, it's a
No.
minor spill.
Did
No,
you
minor
read
spill,
The
not,
effect,
not
no,
the
no,
impact.
I'm saying
really
there's
say-
no way for them
Wait a
to.
second.
But you have no idea what it's like to have public facing all day long for 3 weeks of no oysters, your daily oyster company. Like that interface and the constant, one thing that is beautiful about this group is doing something all together. We all know that the number one thing was taking care of our employees and the future of Netarts Bay. I do not feel any better about the future of Netarts Bay after this. Like, I just don't feel like we all have the same skin in the game, and you're working to prevent. Like, all we're hearing is it's gonna happen again, it's just a matter of time. Like, what do we really do? There's been some pretty big changes, and you say, it's limited, but there still is no.
Nobody is ever gonna give you a
And we all
guarantee
rely on
that
this
this will
tide
not
going
happen
in
again.
or coming out, and you don't.
But I can
don't
guarantee
have
you,
the
we do
understanding
all
of
we
the
can
impact financially.
to assure it doesn't happen.
That's basically what we do.
Well, one of the comments that I read on Jerry's Facebook post what he knows about the sewage spill was that the comment when you said there has no significant impact to the environment. This group of guys, people right here, we are an impact to the environment.
So that's what I'm
We-
trying to point you to, DEQ's response, that's their response.
We
They're not
are.
agreeing with Oregon Department of Agriculture's closing of it. They don't think that there was a contamination.
This is FDA's closure, not ODA. ODA was trying to help us test out of it.
Sorry, can I ask you a question? Did you find out about the closure from the FDA?
No, ODA.
ODA, okay.
They act on behalf of federal standards. ODA did everything, they really went to bat for us, he wanted to get out there and test, he did everything to open it. but federal guidelines say 80 amount of sewage in the bay, 21-day closure.
And that's new.
I think it
19.
was
2019.
Couple of years, yeah.
I haven't been sitting in here just letting this slide by. I've been trying to figure out where did all the agencies drop the ball, okay? Two, when did this 21-day mandatory shutdown of just harvesting oysters come from? But you could still go out there and harvest clams, and you could still go harvest crab. They were still out there fishing.
It was closed. Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife actually closed it. I have a picture of the sign.
On Wednesday.
There was
Oregon-
500 people out there Saturday digging clams.
I understand, but if
And
you
not
read
one law
the
enforcement.
responses from Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, they say they didn't even know about this until Wednesday.
Yeah.
And so they acted on it Wednesday, and then if you read on, there were so many different signs put up, and some of those signs, I don't even know where they came from. Because the only signs that should have been put up, according to what we were told, was the signs that we roped off the contaminated surface area. Oregon Department of Ag said bay's not closed, okay? And specifically told me get the barricades out of the way because the oyster farmers had to get in and work their beds. So we immediately got that barricades out of your guys' way. Now, the closure, I didn't even find out until several days later. So that's when all this uproar came, and they're out there, and there's signage up, and I guess according to the Pioneer, they've got pictures of people still out there harvesting clams.
And they're scuba diving the next day.
Yeah, and they're doing all this stuff, and I'm thinking, all right, if I was an oyster farmer, I would probably be going through the roof right now. Okay? Why aren't they bacteria testing? I don't know what